My name is Clara Bennett, and I have always prided myself on being the glue of my family. At 32 years old, I find myself living in the small town of Mason Valley, surrounded by rolling hills and the kind of close-knit community where everyone knows each other's names. From my cozy little house with its white picket fence to the familiar roads that lead to my school, everything in this town resonates with warmth and togetherness. I am a teacher at our local middle school where I fill my days with laughter and inspiration. The kids keep me youthful and their antics remind me of simple joys, but beneath this jovial facade brews a storm, a tempest of emotions that has been gathering strength for years. This storm reached a crescendo the January just passed as my eldest brother, Samuel, celebrated his 60th birthday. My memories of Samuel shine brighter than crystal. He was the golden child, the one who pursued dreams with relentless passion, traversing life's wild pathways with apparent ease. But as he sank deeper into a life of comfort far away in Florida with his partner Jason, I felt a chasm opening between us that I could not bridge. Samuel's absence became a constant gnawing ache, a sharp splinter lodged deep in my heart. The family gatherings that had been so filled with laughter and love morphed into occasions that excluded me. Holidays unfolded with our parents, my siblings, and families from the neighborhood gathered around tables adorned in elaborate spreads while I spent yet another season alone. Each snapped holiday photo I saw on my phone pierced my heart, images of joy and togetherness, while I remained a ghost, fading into the background. Just when I thought my life in Mason Valley could move forward without the heavy weight of family, the unexpected buzz of my phone shattered my isolation. It was Jason, Samuel's partner, and a wave of excitement flooded his voice as he launched into a grand plan for Samuel's birthday celebration. Clara, he squealed. I have the most fantastic ideas. We are thinking of jetting off to London or perhaps indulging in a wine-tasting escapade in Portugal. Can you picture it? Everyone raving about Samuel's big birthday surprise. His enthusiasm was palpable across the line, but each word just tightened the clench of irritation in my gut. Wow, Jason, those sound amazing. Samuel will definitely love that, I managed to reply even as my heart twisted. But that sounds pretty expensive for a birthday trip. Honestly, I would have sold my soul for a simple road trip, just the three of us, him, Jason, and me, but the grandeur made my stomach roll. As he rambled on about extravagant hotels and Michelin-starred restaurants, I could see the shimmering picture he was painting fade into an unapproachable dream. I knew my parents would be less than keen, and I could almost hear their rational voices reminding me of the practical costs of life. Sure enough, the moment I brought the conversation up with them, I was met with rolled eyes and exasperated sighs. Clara, we love your brother, we do, my mother said, her voice a mix of tenderness and resolve. But this kind of spending is just not feasible for us. Jason, bless his heart, has always been a little over the top when it comes to these things. I could tell by the tightening of my father's jaw that he was equally annoyed, crunching numbers in his head while trying to sound fair. We can do something more modest, maybe a local gathering. The idea began to swirl in my mind, a flickering light in the muddled darkness around my feelings. Maybe it was a chance not just to connect with Samuel but also to rekindle what had long faded. How about a trip to Epcot? I proposed, attempting to redeem the situation. It's family-friendly and it gives us some time together. My mind churned, envisioning an innocent day filled with laughter and attractions we could all enjoy. I thought it made the most sense since both Samuel and Jason usually went all out in their own way. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to be filled with hope, thinking this could be the opportunity I desperately needed. My parents began to warm up to the idea, the familiar twinkle of intrigue replacing their frown. That spark ignited but fraught with uncertainty. But then Jason, with his ever-inflated sense of grandeur, escalated the plan further. Clara, the Epcot trip sounds fun and all, but I'm ready to take this to the next level. 5-star accommodation, fine dining every night. Oh, and let's bring my sister too. Nothing but the best for Samuel's birthday. My heart crumbled as I listened to his proposals dance through the air, realizing that the simple family gathering I longed for spiraled into a whopping $30,000 affair. My father's fingers began to fidget as he crunched numbers louder than before. Jason, we can't possibly justify that kind of expense. It's a birthday, not a wedding. His frustration hung in the tone of his voice like smoke, yet Jason persisted. Come on, you know this is going to be a wonderful experience for Samuel. We want to give him the best. The excitement dripped like honey from his words, but my blood began to boil. Here was this man, a relative stranger who had wormed his way into our family's heart, including me on the side like a reluctant addition to a recipe, demanding lavish plans while planting seeds of resentment in my heart. My parents' resolve only hardened as my father replied curtly, "We'll provide something memorable, but we can't afford to go that far, especially not for a single birthday." In my head, I rehearsed a counterargument. I was family too, had a right to be part of the celebration, but when Jason reached out to me to ask for help, I felt trapped in an impossible position. What do you think, Clara? Can you help us organize the trip? Jason asked, his tone a mix of excitement and desperation. I took a breath, tasting bitterness in my throat, and nodded. Sure, I can help. It was the least I could do for Samuel, even if it felt like a betrayal of my own heart. I convinced myself that maybe this was my chance to rebuild what had faded. However, deep inside, my resentment was brewing, distorting the familiar warmth I had once felt. But then, as I was diligently working to piece together plans, the story turned darker. One sudden evening, I stumbled upon a casual comment by a mutual friend from our childhood while scrolling through social media. Can you believe Samuel and Jason booked a luxury suite at Epcot? They can afford it, they should treat themselves. The words hit me like a slap. My pulse quickened, disbelief trickling into each farming thought lightning fast. A suite? Fitting my brother within the opulent walls of that life-altering experience. Panic clawed at my throat as flashes of exclusion flickered racing through my mind. How could they do this without me? They were meant to be my family. I needed Samuel to be the anchor he used to be, but instead, he was coasting further away with the tide, and Jason was the wind filling those sails. The moment I realized this, it felt as if my world tilted off axis, as I thought I was working to bridge a gap, only to discover they had already built walls around their own castle while I was left staring from the outside. Clara, Clara, my phone shrilled with a text from Jason echoing my storm of emotions. Guess what? Samuel and I just confirmed our stay at the luxury suite at Epcot. Can you believe it? The screen felt like a dagger to my chest, and I could not help but send back a terse response. Great, enjoy yourselves. In that moment, my heart hardened, the ache of losing Samuel driving me to the edge, forcing me back to the deep resentment I had been trying so desperately to ignore. I felt like an outsider in my own family, discarded like old furniture that people no longer wanted. The truth was undeniable, a painful echo resounding within me. I realized that all this time, while I tried to maintain my place in the family, they had silently made it clear I was not needed or wanted in their world anymore. My chest tightened painfully with the realization. I feared the swelling tide of emotions would drown me, drowning my ability to see a path forward. I shouldered the pain like a heavy boulder heaped upon my back, but with each passing day, I could feel the seed of determination begin to sprout from the depths of my anger. Perhaps I had not lost Samuel to Jason after all. Maybe I could claw my way back into my brother's life in a way they would not expect, something radical. I had spent too long on the fringes of my family, too long playing the role of the supportive sister when the very fabric of my heart felt torn. This newest betrayal was the spark I needed, igniting a fierceness I had long buried within me. The storm within had escalated, and the soft murmurs of vengeance beckoned me forth, whispering promises of reclamation. The world around me began to dim, and an electric anticipation coursed through my veins as I plotted my next move. Soon, I would show them that I was not a faded whisper in this life. I would make my presence known. Just beneath the surface of this ordinarily hopeful town of Mason Valley, a tide was rising. The storm was gathering strength. All I needed was one spark. The disappointment cut deeper than I expected. I spent the days leading up to Samuel's birthday festering in a quiet storm, my heart heavy with the knowledge that I was no longer part of the family fun. Instead, I had been cast aside, reduced to a mere spectator. The isolation felt like a dense fog suffocating me. I could still picture the text messages buzzing through my phone, the celebratory images of Samuel's lavish birthday bash filling my feed. I would scroll past his friends flaunting expensive outfits and vibrant smiles, all while I sat in my own living room, suffocating under the weight of betrayal. It stung more than I could have predicted. Something in me snapped. I could not confront them directly, certainly not now, knowing that Samuel always brushed my concerns aside, treating my worries like a passing cloud, an annoyance that would eventually disappear. I ruminated over my memories of the summer when we were kids, the backyard parties our parents tirelessly organized, the laughter echoing off the walls, the sense of belonging thick in the air like the sweet smell of barbecue. Those moments were sacred, and I felt a flicker of hope that my old ways could still remind my brother of family ties that he seemed to have forgotten. It was then that I decided to take the road less traveled. Instead of sulking in isolation, digging deeper into my resentment, I mapped out a plan that shifted my focus from what I had lost to what I could reclaim. I envisioned a gathering, a backyard barbecue full of warmth, laughter, and the love that had built our family. As I dialed the number to my other brother, I could feel adrenaline coursing through me. Jason, I said as soon as he picked up, I'm planning a get-together at my place this weekend, just family. He hesitated, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. But Samuel's celebrating with his friends. Shouldn't we let him have his fun? This was my cue to assert myself. This is family fun too. We have this bond we can't just ignore like it doesn't exist. I want to remind us all of that. I tried to sound convincing, hopeful even, although deep down the uncertainty crept in. Would that string of our past be enough to pull us back together? "'Kay, I'm in, I'll bring the drinks," Jason finally said, and a smirk crept onto my face. I was already starting to visualize what the evening might look like. As the days flipped like pages in a book, I poured my heart into planning this gathering. I sent out invites to close family members, each message woven with love and nostalgia. As the RSVPs trickled in, a bittersweet smile settled on my lips. This was really happening. I could feel warmth returning to my heart. I didn't want it to be confrontational, and I didn't intend for it to become a showdown. I simply wanted to reconnect. The night of the gathering arrived, and I sighed as I stepped outside. The air was imbued with the scent of blooming flowers, the vibrant hues of sunset casting a golden glow across the sky. It was the perfect day. As I lit the grill, anticipation pulsed through me like the flicker of flames, warmth radiating not just from the grill but also from the spirit I hoped would wrap around all of us like our favorite blankets from childhood. I grilled the burgers with care, making sure they were perfectly browned, flipping them with precision. As I prepared my famous potato salad, a recipe passed through generations like a sacred family scroll. I found comfort in the simplicity of each ingredient: potatoes, mayonnaise, herbs. The same way our family recipe had mirrored our bond, as family members began to arrive, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter erupted from the porch, hands waving in excitement, and tired faces transformed into murals of joy. "Clara, this place looks amazing," one aunt exclaimed. "You really outdid yourself." Her praise warmed me from the inside out, fueling my resolve. "Thank you, I wanted it to feel special," I responded, my heart racing with excitement. The sound of laughter wrapped around me like a soothing melody. These were the moments I craved. I saw my brother Jason mingling easily with everyone, his grin infectious. I approached him, pouring drinks, feeling my excitement meld with an undercurrent of unease. What would Samuel think? Would he even see this? At one point, a cousin snatched my phone out of my pocket and declared, "We need to document this, I want a group photo." They gathered everyone, standing together against the backdrop of our childhood home, all of us beaming like the sun with pure joy radiating off our faces. I couldn't help but think of how different this was from Samuel's celebration. "Look at this, the best photo ever," Jason exclaimed, peering at the screen. The moment felt magical, the kind that reinforced our connection against the backdrop of beauty's ephemeral. "Too bad we're missing someone," he said, the grin fading slightly. "Not missing someone," I corrected him, though the words stung like salt in an open wound. "We're here, isn't that what matters?" The heavy ache in my chest softened just a little as we continued to celebrate what it meant to be family, and I reveled in my role as the facilitator of joy. As the burgers sizzled, our laughter filled the air, each chuckle rising into the warm summer night like sparks from a firework, illuminating the sky above us. I felt fulfilled, surrounded by love and warmth, a stark contrast to the emptiness I had let myself feel for too long. With the sun gently retreating into the horizon, I gathered everyone around the fire pit, the crackling flames casting playful shadows on our faces. Mismatched chairs encircled the fire. It felt intimate, inviting, the fabric of our history woven into the night. "Remember the summer before high school?" I prompted, sparking nostalgia. The stories shared that night ran deeper than I anticipated, tales that wrapped around our hearts, drawing us closer together. "Clara, do you remember that time we dared Samuel to jump into the lake with his clothes on?" One cousin chuckled, and soon the entire group erupted in laughter, the sound mingling with the soft rustle of trees. "I should have known better than to take that bet," I admitted, feigning indignation. "That was the best summer of our lives. No way he was ever going to let us forget it." As stories flowed like the drinks, I felt the heaviness of my resentment start to lift. Each shared laughter was another stitch repairing the fabric of our bond. The chatter ebbing and flowing reminded me distinctly of how our parents had organized similar gatherings, where we played together and celebrated life's simple treasures. Tears pricked my eyes for a moment as I recalled their laughter, the unconditional love that suffused our small gatherings. I wondered if Samuel could feel the warmth of these memories right now where he was. As the night wore on, the photographs taken were flooding social media, resonating with joy and connection. I watched as the smiles we captured beamed brightly against the backdrop of our cozy summer evening, each post flashing across the screen, each like a reminder to Samuel that we were more than what he had chosen to leave behind. In that moment, I found solace in the laughter, the warmth of my family, and within myself. The deeper I submerged into this joyful gathering, the more I saw my own worth. I was still Clara. I was still family, stitched into the tapestry of our shared memories and love. But as fleeting as the happiness was in that space, I could still see Samuel at the edge of it all, dimmed by his choices, fading into the background. I realized that perhaps my gathering, though a simple barbecue, was bigger than mere revenge. It was about reclaiming our story, rekindling bonds, and reminding my brother of the value that family holds amidst even the shiniest distractions. With hope igniting within me, I knew part of me was ready to rise again from the ashes of disappointment, ready to become the beacon of family love, even if that meant confronting Samuel one day soon. The world outside my little gathering shifted brutally right after that magical evening. Beautiful moments encapsulated in photographs filled with laughter, warmth, and love blossomed across social media. The glow of the pictures contrasted sharply with the reality of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Soon enough, the whirlwind came in the form of a rapidly typed message, followed by a ringing phone that shattered the blissful silence of my morning. Jason's voice sliced through the air as I answered, a furious tempest ready to unleash his fury. "What is wrong with you, Clara?" he spat, the crackle of animosity clear. It was a jarring reminder that the fairy tale of last night no longer existed. I could picture him pacing back and forth in his living room, the tension rising in his body with each word. "How could you exclude Samuel and his friends from your little party? This was supposed to be about celebrating him." I could almost see the outrage written across his face, furrowed brow and clenched teeth emerging like a bad caricature of a comic book villain. My heart raced as I braced myself against the accusation. Each syllable felt like a bullet aimed straight for my heart, piercing past the seams of our fragile existence. The attention on the party had escalated, igniting something within him that I had hoped would dormant. I closed my eyes momentarily, feeling the smooth coolness of the phone against my ear, allowing the silence between us to resonate in the wake of his vehement onslaught. "That was his birthday, for crying out loud," he continued, voice straining. "Do you really think you can compete with that?" "Compete?" I echoed, confusion mixing with irritation. With a finger trembling against the seemingly indestructible case of my phone, I inhaled deeply, letting the breath out slowly as if trying to release the pressure that was building within me. I did not invite Samuel because he made a choice to exclude us from his own birthday plans. I merely celebrated the family that was there. You cannot book a grand hotel without even considering how it impacts those of us who care about him. There it was, the defensive wall of justification rising between us like an impenetrable fortress. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside. It was power. The realization that I was not merely reacting to the unfairness of his words, but standing my ground gave me an unexpected sense of strength. The shadows of doubt and guilt that often haunted my conscience faded as the weight of my words settled in the air around me. The silence that followed carried the weight of his disbelief. I pictured him perhaps seated on the edge of his plush living room sofa, palms pressed against his knees as if in prayer. But instead of seeking calm, he was preparing for war, a battle for the heart of someone we both loved, yet had built impenetrable walls around. I felt the tension stretch like a tight string ready to snap. Clara, how could you think? Jason, I interrupted, cutting through the renewed wave of his indignation with a steeliness I didn't know I could muster. You think I wanted this fight, that I wanted to snub Samuel? Do you know how many times I've had to stand by and watch as he built this perfect little world without me? I only wanted us to be recognized as a real family. His sharp intake of breath hung in the air as I hesitated. Those final words, tumbling out in an unexpected burst of emotion, lingered heavily between us. There it was, the truth spilling out, raw and unfiltered. I could picture his reaction instantly, eyes widening in shock, a flicker of comprehension unearthing the unexpected consequences of his attempts to maintain normalcy. I never thought of it that way, he finally murmured, words weighed down with uncertainty, as if doing the math on our fractured family history. I know you didn't, I admitted, softening enough to let a shared understanding steal into the crevices of our conversation. But it's so much more complicated than what anyone sees on the surface. Samuel deliberately allowed us to be on the outside. He built walls for himself as much as for us. I could hear Jason's frustration simmering beneath the edges of his confused silence. But excluding his friends, that was low, Clara. The photos, do you think they won't get back to him, that he won't see them? That this whole thing won't blow up? I know it will, I stated, my chest tightening at the thought of the inevitable confrontation. I'm counting on it. I just can't understand how you could do something like this, he said, exasperated, punctuated by the sound of his heavy breaths. What happened to empathy? What happened to being the bigger person? Empathy? I echoed, the word tinged with bitterness. Maybe for once it's time for someone else to feel the sting of being forgotten. Samuel, in his grand hotel and grander dreams, forgot about what mattered. He chose his friends over us, and now he can feel the repercussions, however painful they may be. As our conversation wound down, I could sense the moment slipping precariously into silence, and with it came an unease that wrapped itself around me, squeezing tighter until I could hardly breathe. What had I set into motion? I could almost hear the creeping anxiety in the silence that enveloped us. Each tick of the clock felt like the countdown to a showdown I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to face. Moments later, I hung up the phone and leaned heavily against the kitchen counter. The old wood was warm beneath my palm, and in the middle of the chaos, I found respite in the familiar fading scent of rosemary from last night's dinner. My thoughts whirred with the consequences that awaited me as I stood there, the sun pouring through the window, blindingly bright yet chaotic in its intensity. I watched the edges of a half-eaten lemon pie, nestled lovingly on the counter, the bright yellow a stark contrast to the turmoil raging in my mind. As evening fell, I knew he would come. Samuel would likely stand at the threshold of my world, ready to confront me. I should have prepared for the tension twisting my insides, but the satisfaction of all I had begun to unravel settled more heavily on my conscience. Images of our family gathering flooded my mind. I could see laughter erupting like fireworks, familial bonds intertwined with silly conversations and simple joy. And yet all of that warmth barely covered the frostbite Samuel had imposed. Each like on a social media post, each positive comment layered upon another, all the while just below the surface I could hear the splintering of relationships beneath it all. An hour later, as dusk painted the sky in colors of bruised purples and deep blues, the doorbell rang, shattering my thoughts. I felt my heart race as the moment stretched indefinitely, echoing the building tensions that had become an unwelcome resident within me. Finally, I placed my hand on the doorknob, the coolness of the metal surprising me as I pulled the door open. He stood there, tall and imposing and almost ethereal in his shock, the perfect life he pretended to uphold crumbling beneath the weight of his expression. The polished veneer, the one designed to reflect glory and happiness, began to crack before my very eyes. Clara, he breathed, rawness threading through his voice as the weight of everything hung heavy between us. We need to talk? The import of his words filled the night air, heavy and significant. I braced for what was to follow, for the moment to peel back layers of facade, unearthing truth from illusion as we began to untangle this web I had woven around us. All the phone call hung heavy in the air long after I hung up. The silence in my modest kitchen enveloped me like a thick fog, casting a gloom that seemed to swallow the last vestiges of warmth from the late afternoon sun streaming through the window. I stood with the phone still cradled in my palm, its screen darkened but still buzzing with the aftershocks of our conversation. I could still hear his voice, each word echoing with that icy detachment, as if he had conjured a barrier between us that felt almost tangible. Clara, I do not understand your motives, he had said, his tone so frigid it felt like a stab to my chest. I took a deep breath, feeling the steam from the kettle as it began to whistle behind me, the scent of the herbal mint tea I had been trying to coax myself into drinking almost forgotten. What were my motives exactly? I had to wonder as I grasped for the remnants of my composure. My thoughts were a storm, swirls of hurt, confusion, and a desperate longing for connection mixed with the bitterness of the estrangement we had fallen into. It struck me then just how deeply Samuel had transformed the meaning of family for us. Celebrations of birthdays, holidays, those once joyful gatherings soaked with laughter were now sinking into the quicksand of loneliness. I wondered what he truly thought our bond was built upon. His words replayed in my mind, "This is my birthday, you're supposed to be my sister." The way he said sister felt heavy, almost mocking. Was he genuinely blind to the widening rift, or was he simply choosing to ignore it? My heart tightened in my chest as I thought about the years that had slowly built this divide. For him, was I only a footnote in the story of his achievements? The kettle's whistle sliced through my thoughts, snapping me back to reality. I poured the steaming water over the tea bag, watching as the liquid clouded from its original clarity into a deep amber. The aroma filled my kitchen, but I caught myself staring blankly at the swirling wisps. "You should be happy for me," he had insisted, that final part of his accusation slicing through my gut. Did he honestly believe I could erase the years of isolation? The painful birthday dinners where I sat quietly as he regaled his new friends swelled within me like a tide rising, pushing against walls I had once built to protect my heart. But those walls, theirs were now toppled. A small part of me wished he could see me, really see me. I had not chosen to be isolated. It had been a decision made together, or at least I felt that it had. The chasm between us was not just Samuel's whitewashed life replete with fame and fortune, but also our shared childhood memories littered with neglect. I brought my now brewed tea to the small table in the corner of the kitchen, the sun dipping lower, casting a soft glow around the room. I realized how I missed those uncomplicated moments when we saw each other as siblings, before walls of ambition and envy grew thicker. Sisterhood is not just a label, I muttered to myself, realizing I was talking to the empty air as I stared into my cup, the steam rising like the faint hints of hope still flickering within me. It used to be about having each other's backs. The familiar ache surged in my chest again, longing for not just the bygone days but also a reconciliation. I was not asking for much, I just wanted to reach out to him, for us to see through the facade the world saw, to grasp the reality of who we were to one another, the roots from which we had sprouted. The phone call had felt like a climb to a peak, exhilarating and terrifying, leaving me breathless at the top but unsure how to proceed. "You're supposed to have my back," he had said, and he was right, which gnawed at me even more. Maybe I should have been keeping quiet, a loyal sister standing by, but my heart had grown weary of silence. It was choking me, a labyrinth where I had lost my way. At that moment, I knew that I had gotten off track somewhere and had to find the right path back, one where I wasn't merely a shadow lurking at the edges of Samuel's lavish celebrations. I set the tea down and paced slowly across the small living room carpet, tracing my fingers along the back of the worn-out sofa, feeling its fabric beneath my fingertips as a soothing reminder of comfort. Each step felt heavy, yet freeing at the same time. I glanced out the window at the sky slowly fading into twilight. The colors blended like the feelings swirling within me, something constantly shifting, giving way. I had quietly replayed the moments of my childhood in my mind, the laughter we once shared in this very house. I could picture our younger selves, sneaking snacks, whispering secrets beneath the pale glow of night lights, long before life's complicated definitions found us. The more I thought, the more I recalled those small moments that defined the essence of our relationship. "You chose isolation, not me," I had retorted, the frustration bubbling under the surface, but it stung to think that he had the power to weave that harsh narrative. "Am I the villain in this story now?" I whispered aloud, shaking my head lightly at the reflection glazed across the window. I could see myself all too clearly, the deepening lines of weariness were forming around my eyes, and my heart had sunk to depths I never thought I could dive. No, I decided. Surely I could carve out a different ending. I wouldn't be defined by mere labelings of success or failure. I could stand tall despite the tremors within me. I would make my story resonate with love once again, a journey forged from life's chaotic rivers rather than stagnant waters. Each step I took felt reinforced by newfound determination. His extravagant lifestyle may have blinded him to the memories that had cemented our bond, but I could use that to my advantage. I had to make him see what he was overlooking. The phone line between us was severed, yes, but what if I painted a different picture? I reached for my notebook tucked away on the side table, the pages soft with time and filled with reckless scribbles of thoughts, rants, ideas, and desperate cries for understanding. As I flipped through, pages fluttered beneath my fingertips, recalling dreams and wishes I had penned when trying to sift through the complicated feelings of our relationship. "This is who I know you to be," I wrote, glancing up at the brick wall adorned with snapshots of us smiling under our mother's warm embrace. Side by side, we had once been inseparable. Writing down what I yearned to say was not about drawing blood, it was about healing, a bridge to bring us closer. I scribbled vigorously, pouring every ounce of emotional resolution into the letter. "I want to celebrate you, not just the image you portray. I want the real you, the one I grew up with." As the words flowed, I felt layers of hurt peel away, replaced by a peacemaking resolve. You built walls, yes, I wrote, but I refuse to let them determine how our story will end. I want to break down those walls and be there for each other once more. My pen flowed, running wild over each page until finally I stopped and stared at what I had created, a vivid tapestry of love, frustration, but most importantly, a desire for connection. Once the ink dried, I folded the letter carefully, sealing all my fears, hopes, and undeniable love within it. It felt like a lifeline stretched across the chasm that stood between us. Pain radiated from that telephone call, but beneath it lay the potential for healing. The edges of the paper felt warm against my fingertips, infused with a heartbeat that echoed my resolve. Placing the letter in an envelope, I took a long, deep breath, accepting the silence that thrummed around me as a necessary passage toward understanding. I would not let resentment spoil the pot of roots we shared. I would remind him of family, of togetherness, of all those moments he had seemingly missed. I stood poised at the threshold, letter in hand, sensing that remnants of hurt could still linger, but I refused to allow the walls to dictate the rest of our story. May this be the beginning of something new, I said softly into the quiet room. I finally knew what it meant to reclaim my life. It was stepping into my power without malice and letting love guide my actions instead. Tomorrow I would send this letter, hoping it would kindle the embers of a relationship I desperately wanted to rekindle and reforge our bond anew. The chasm between us felt narrower, a pathway carved by the claims of the past. All I needed was to reach out and bridge that gap one step at a time, and somehow I would find Samuel on the other side, days stretched into weeks, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog that refused to lift. I had been living in its shadows long enough. It snaked around me, drawing my mind back to old wounds, but gradually I managed to find my footing again. I recalled the warmth of laughter shared with friends, the simple comfort of being understood. These moments rekindled relationships that brought a gentle spark back into my spirit. I had spent countless hours contemplating the bond between my brother and me, and I started to notice how my parents felt the weight of that rift. They offered me strength in their quiet, unwavering support. I caught glimpses of the hurt in my mother's eyes when she mentioned my brother's name, her voice always softened with a bittersweet melody, worry etched into the lines of her face. I miss the connection we all used to have, she murmured one afternoon as we sat on our porch, the sun casting a golden hue over the horizon. I wish your brother could see how vital the family bonds are. Her words hung in the air, resonating deep within me. I nodded, absorbing her sentiment. In her gaze, I saw so much more, an understanding of how the family unit had been twisted in the winds of pride and resentment. Even they were torn, grappling with the loyalty that twisted itself into a burden. I could feel a bittersweet flavor lingering in my mouth, a reminder of what had been lost. With each passing day, I learned more about the cracks not just in my brother's relationships with my parents and me, but in the web of connections he shared with his friends. News trickled in like slow raindrops, each drop an echo of his unraveling. The once bustling social life he curated, filled with high-priced hotels and extravagant outings, began to fade. Friends had grown weary of the toxicity and entitlement that clung to him and Jason like a second skin. It wasn't just about the superficial glitz, it was deeper. The news people whispered about him canvas painted a very different picture, one that showed the importance of true connections, ones rooted in family love and understanding. One evening, as I gazed at the sun bathing our surroundings in oranges and pinks, a sudden spark ignited in my heart. I had to reach out once more to take that leap of faith. Surely there could be a middle ground. After a long struggle to find the right words, I sat down and typed out a message on my phone. The act of creating those words was almost meditative, allowing me to glimpse my own vulnerabilities while standing firm in my truth. Hey Samuel, I wrote, my fingers trembling slightly above the screen. I want to apologize if my actions felt like an attack. I miss the family we once had. I hope this doesn't exclude us from future conversations. You are still my brother. Pressing the send button felt like releasing the breath I had been holding for too long, a weight lifting while simultaneously sending ripples of anxiety through me. Would he respond? Or would this only deepen our chasm? Days passed, each filled with the uncertainty of my choice until one rainy afternoon, a notification chimed like a lighthouse cutting through a fog. I opened the message hesitantly. I lost sight of what is important. Can we meet and talk? It felt like hope crackling to life, igniting the damp corners of my heart that had been shrouded in darkness. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as I read those lines again, the softness in his words almost palpable. Despite the distance, the anger, and the misunderstandings, perhaps we could bridge the divide. Now, as I prepared for our meeting, I found myself caught in a whirlpool of emotions. I chose an airy cafe, its fragrance of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries wrapping around me like a warm hug. The thought of seeing my brother brought both excitement and apprehension. I wanted to shake off the remnants of our past conflict, to show him how much I had changed, how much I yearned for the connection that had been forced away by misunderstandings. As I waited, I watched the steam from my coffee swirl into the air, creating playful dances in the soft light. My mind drifted to memories of our childhood, days spent laughing on the playground, sharing secrets under the stars. What happened to us? I thought, the nostalgia almost palpable. I could see the outlines of his face in my mind, filled with joy, untouched by bitterness or mistrust. Then the door swung open and I glanced up, half expecting to see him striding in, brimming with bravado. Instead, he walked in hesitantly, his shoulders slumped, a far cry from the confident young man I remembered. He wore a worn hoodie, his neat hair unkempt, as if he had been lost in thoughts for too long. Our eyes met, and I felt a knot in my throat tight. Hey, I managed, my voice catching slightly. Hey, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. We stood there in that moment, the noise of the cafe muted, the rest of the world fading away. I could see the turmoil within him, the weight of everything he had been carrying. Slowly, he approached the table, sliding into the seat across from me, and the air felt thick with unspoken words. How have you been? I asked, trying to break the suffocating silence. He shrugged, visibly uncomfortable. I have been trying to figure things out, he said, his gaze flickering away from mine as if searching for some memory to hold on to. I couldn't help but notice that his fingers fidgeted with the edge of the table as if anchoring himself to something solid. I get that, I said, leaning in closer, encouraging him. I've been doing a lot of thinking too about us, about what we lost. He looked up then, his eyes searching mine as if trying to decipher where I stood in this tangled web of family dynamics. I didn't realize how much I'd turned away from what mattered. I was so focused on being better than everyone else that I ignored my own family. I did not want to show weakness. I absorbed his words, the deep-rooted pain revealing itself. We all make mistakes, I know I did, but our bond is something worth fighting for. I miss you, Samuel. A shadow flickered across his face, eyes darting away. I miss you too, but I didn't know how to bridge that gap. I thought maybe leaving everything behind would help, but it just made me realize how alone I am. It's okay to need your family, it's always okay, no one is perfect, I said firmly, hoping to convey my feelings through the weight of my words. We can grow from this, we can leave the past behind us. Samuel nodded slowly, curling into himself, absorbing the weight of the conversation. I don't even know how to begin to fix what I've broken. I pushed you away, and for that I am truly sorry. I am too. I didn't handle things well, but I am here now. I want to rebuild what we had, one brick at a time, I offered, feeling the warmth swell in my heart at the prospect of mending our connection. His shoulders relaxed a fraction, and I dared to hope. Do you think we can ever really go back to the way it was? No, I said softly. But we can build something new, a better understanding of each other, a more solid foundation. The moment coursed with vulnerability, a synergy of shared experiences and regrets. It was as if we were peeling away years of misunderstandings, layer by layer, to rediscover who we were. Like to try, he finally admitted, a small smile breaking through, hesitant but genuine. Me too, I said, relief flooding through me. I'd like to try. We shared the rest of that afternoon, talking about everything we had been avoiding, the good memories, the painful moments, and the dreams that had transformed during our time apart. I felt cracks in the wall we had built, vulnerable yet healing. We laughed over stories of childhood escapades, reminiscing over family game nights that had turned into epic battles of wit. And there, amid the laughter and the warmth of fresh coffee and baked goods, we began to rebuild our familial bond brick by brick. It seemed fitting that our connection was once again wrapped in the simplest flavors of life, woven together like the threads of both love and acceptance. As I left the cafe that day, walking alongside him beneath the sunlit sky, I couldn't help but look up in gratitude. What once seemed unattainable had begun to transform, akin to dawn breaking through the darkest night. The bitterness of revenge had shifted, softened by the realization that love, after all, is what binds families together. In that moment, I embraced the knowledge that healing is a journey, never a destination, and that even the most broken connections can be repaired through patience, understanding, and love. A new dawn spilling over the horizon of our lives.